So I've been thinking about how do you actually gain a competitive advantage and why is that actually so important? And the answer that I'm going to tell you, it is not like what other people tell you. And in fact, it's really, really different. But I think it's the most important thing. So if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Maslock. I'm an associate professor. Actually, I teach strategy. That's all I'm going to say right now. I teach strategy, I teach innovation, I teach a bunch of stuff. But when I went through my undergrad, I actually did an engineering degree. And the way that I viewed the world was that the way that you actually get better was through solving problems and having things that were a lot more efficient and focusing on the process and fixing things and all of that kind of stuff. That's how I was trained. That's how I thought about the world. And then I went and did a strategy degree. I did my doctorate actually in strategy. So I thought about the world in terms of a lot of economics, to be honest, and how the world actually works in terms of getting a competitive advantage by having contracts and thinking about how do you position yourself relative to other people and other firms. How do you actually build on what's going on within yourself or within the firm that you're actually working for, and really thinking about all the strategic kind of stuff and contracts and all sorts of things that one would think that that's actually the real core to business. But over life, and as I've gotten more experience with things, and as I've grown up, and as I've gotten kids, I think the key thing, the strategy, the key thing to getting a competitive advantage, the key thing to actually doing well is being able to say, I love you, man. I know that that is a really kind of weird answer and a really weird thing to think about. But the more that I think about how things actually work, it really comes down to how we feel about ourselves and being able to say, I love you as a person. And that's really weird and awkward for me to say because I have my things that I'm dealing with inside. And we all have our things that we're dealing with inside. And it's always really tricky to figure out. But if you're able to say just enough, I love you and I actually respect to who you are, you'll be able to stand up a little bit. And you'll be able to have more conversations. You'll actually be able to connect with other people. And then being able to say, I love you to somebody else. And I'm not going to say, I think that's crazy to go around and say, hey, I love you. Don't do that. That's weird, right? But, being able to look at somebody and connect with them and being able to hang out with them and just being part of their life, no matter, if you are an employee or somebody that you work or you're a manager of somebody else or somebody that, that's just in your life, friend, family, whatever. It's that ability to have that connection and ability to, really think about what's going on inside here is what actually transforms everything else. And that's where competitive advantage actually gets formed. And that's where companies, organizations, they fall apart every time, is because you erode that feeling of what's actually going on inside. And you erode what's that feeling that's going on around everybody else. And it's really hard to sort of figure out how to do that. That's a really tricky and difficult thing to work on, right? That requires all of us to really tackle some difficult problems that are going on and that, here and in our head, and dealing with things that we've grown up with and dealing with all sorts of different stuff. But also it requires dealing with other people's stuff. And, how do you actually handle when other people are doing things? And I'm not saying that, ultimately everything boils down to sort of micro issues and psychological things. But, a large part of what we do as people is really just being ourselves and being able to get up and work on something, and being able to, be okay with that, and dealing with all of those kind of things, and being able to speak openly about everything. That is it. That's how competitive advantage is formed. It's not about contracts. It's not about, positioning against everybody else. It's not about like figuring out what is your resources that you possess that are valuable, rare, and imitable, all this kind of stuff, right? That's not what it is. That's not it. What it is being okay. Being okay to say I love you, being okay with who you are right now, with what you have, being okay with just getting up and doing your thing, regardless of what other people are saying about you, regardless of how you feel about yourself. You get up and do your thing, and hopefully other people are going to be able to join you eventually, and hopefully other people see what you're doing and understand it and get it. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is, right? I think a lot of who we are is missing. A lot of who we are really requires a lot of thought process, but you can do it. You just got to start thinking about who you are as a person. Start working on, nuts to all of this sort of, I can control the world, nuts to, I've got everything under control, nuts to, I'm perfect, and all of that stuff. Like, that's nuts. Just be a good person. Smile. Just keep going. That's it. And if you do that long enough, you do that with enough people, good things happen. And if it doesn't, guess what? You just became a very good person to yourself. And if everybody else ignores that and forgets about it, it's all that matters. And the day that you die and you look up, whether you believe in the pearly gates and all of that kind of stuff or not, that day is going to happen, and you're going to look back. Most of us are going to have that ability to look back, because, dying takes a while. We have that ability to look back and say, hey, was I okay? And ultimately, you want to say, yep, I was okay. That's all that matters. All right, take care.